our story on Instagram.
It's just Oliver.
Very dramatic Oliver.
And a microphone. That's all it needs to be. Pod dog. Hashtag pod dog.
Dramatic Oliver.
Oh, Oliver's not dramatic. He's just needy.
No drama, 420 friendly. Smooth.
Oliver's a smooth, versatile bottom.
Positive vibes only.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Pod Pod Cvlt Cast, where we talk about life, love, learning, and libido, and share our journey through polyamory. I am Eric.
I'm Chasten.
I'm Hannah.
I'm Whiskey Dick Calhoun.
Hi, Max. That's Max.
Yeah,
Oh, hey.
that showed up.
So Hannah sent me a thing on Instagram, and she shared it with us in the kitchen. And it is from poly_vegan_glow on Instagram. And it says,
What?
Is polyamory bad for anyone else's waistline? Between my husband feeding me and my girlfriend cooking delicious food for me, I'm gonna be bigger than my dreams soon. I, like, as the resident meal planner, I would say that I feed you all sorts of unhealthy Southern things, but I try to mix in some healthy stuff now and then. We had overnight oats, which had some good Huel in it, not sponsored. But I got that idea from Simply Nailogical on YouTube because I really like her videos. But she was talking about overnight oats and how they're tasty and delicious and like breakfast dessert, but also kind of healthy because you have your vitamins and nutrients and stuff. Do any of you feel like you eat more because of being poly?
Like I eat out more when I'm
Yeah.
dating.
Yeah, you do.
It's just easy enough to like just hilarious accidental sex.
This is a podcast where we talk about love and relationships, sex and kink, and polyam issues, and whatever else comes up. While we talk about those things, we'll probably also touch on stuff like abuse and violence and mental health challenges. These can be difficult topics, so keep that in mind moving ahead. Try to limit all your gestures because
Yeah, you do tap it.
I seriously considered tying my hands. So
I mean,
if I had thigh
pockets.
pockets,
how about binding your feet?
No, on the
I'm into
thigh
foot
pockets.
binding.
We're not going to talk about the pockets.
no thigh pockets.
Thigh pockets are fucking...
Yeah, it's foul, Chast.
I have
Yeah.
this thing where I really wish I had surgically implanted pockets in my actual thighs, or I could just reach my put
Yes,
my
we
hand.
all
Talking
know.
to right now.
Yeah.
Well, but not everybody else knows. I'm
Well,
talking to the people
no,
listening.
No, we're not.
No, we're not.
I was doing podcast work here.
No, this is the part where we're having a casual conversation that doesn't involve the
Oh,
listener.
I see. Oh well.
That's how this works.
I'm sorry for being aware of our listeners' needs and knowing about my thigh pockets.
God, you're gross.
I recognize that I have different standards for what is gross and what is not.
Yes.
Day drinking. So hi everybody, this is our 5th episode. We launched on September 3rd, so today is Tuesday, a week from September 3rd. I don't know what day that actually is because we're recording this on a
Oh,
Sunday.
we don't need to be that kind of podcast, do we?
I think it's funny, so.
When we pretend that we're in different...
No, I'm
points
not.
of-
That's
How's
what
everybody doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you? I'm day drinking. I'm excited about day drinking. I am having a Bold Rock cider, and it is a Virginia draft, so.
And to the listener, we've just begun day drinking, so the effects haven't actually taken
Yeah,
place
it's
yet.
funny. She's acting like we've been drinking all day.
This is how we are
She's-
normally.
She's
Yeah,
had
this is how we are.
maybe a fluid ounce.
But I'm also
of
on
cider.
steroids right now, so I feel really powerful.
Bordering the roid rage already.
Yeah.
I have roid rage. Today, we are going to talk about our family, our chosen family, the pod, and also our house. We're going to be pretty open and explicit about things that we do, so, keep in mind that there are some things that you might want to keep in mind. Day drinking! Woo! Hey, Max.
Yep.
How do we want to do this? How do we want to talk about us
So
as a unit and us
we,
as
we spent the first 4 episodes getting to know each of us individually, and I think we all agreed. I think I can speak for all of us and say that we decided that here we would talk about us as a group and talk about how we got to where we're at.
Yeah, I think it is a natural progression to talk about us as a unit. Maybe a sensible way to do that would be to talk about it chronologically and talk about the physical house and how we've used the space, and then how that came to be our metaphysical house, our spiritual love space house.
Yeah, how do we call that?
Our
What's-
home.
Right.
Our home.
Versus our house.
Versus our house. Max, your parents passed away and we moved into this house. So we are blessed with an abundance of space and property through tragic circumstances. When we started coming out in the community in like 2012, when we went to our first munch, we were going to munches, and we were going to other people's houses for private play parties and also for potlucks. The big one being a polyamory potluck for a local group that we have here. And there was a point at which we said, what if we do that? What if we get involved? What if we...
Yeah, it seemed like an easy way to offer some service, because we do have space. And the one that you and I had the conversation when we were driving home about offering that happened to be in a city townhouse. So space was very limited, and that group was growing at the time, and we thought we could offer that. So we did, and they agreed.
And then we had a polyamory potluck here.
For some months afterwards, we hosted one monthly.
Yeah, we did. Well, and it was interesting because prior to that, we didn't have a lot of people over. You and I, prior to getting more involved with the community, did not have a lot of friends. I relied strictly on you for social things, which wasn't very healthy. We would have like couple friends, and we would go to roller derby and stuff with people we knew, but we didn't have guests to our home, and we didn't really have family over that much. My mom would come down and we'd do Christmas and stuff like that here, but otherwise we didn't have a lot of people in the house, and that was something that I really craved, because for a house to feel like a home, I feel like it has to have that good party energy. It's like a cleansing energy almost. So when we started hosting the potlucks, it brought me a level of hosting fulfillment that I didn't even know I needed in my life. I just knew that I had a hole to fill. Yeah. So we started doing that, but then we were also going to play parties. But I think that same group, because that group, locally we have a couple of polyamory resources, but we do have a group that is specific to polyamory and kink together, and they do host BDSM play parties or sexy play parties, or however you want to classify that. And they needed a space to host a party because they lost a location, because it's really hard to host big parties with lots of people in your neighborhood and not piss off your neighbors. We don't have but one neighbor. We have family across the street. So we ended up having a party here, and we cleared out some attic space.
Right.
And when we did that, we said, hey, is this enough space for people to fuck in our home? We want boobies. And they were like, yeah, you can have boobies now.
We were gifted with
boobies.
With beatings and boobies. And, concurrent with that, when we started getting involved specifically with the kink community, you and I are, Chastin, pretentious weirdos. And one of the things that spoke to me that I really enjoyed about that community is there are elements of it that are very formal.
Yes.
And,
protocol.
People take titles and establish protocols for themselves and their relationships and things. And also, we would see a banner for a house, house of such and such.
Yes.
Or we would hear that someone belonged to house of so-and-so.
And locally, we have a little miniature kink convention. It's a weekend that our club does. And they have these in England as well. They're called torture gardens. And it's basically like a garden of delights. You go and you experience things. And they would have, on Friday nights, they have a meetup for the houses. And they have a social for the houses. And we would check that out. And groups. Well, I think we're primarily a group-driven community. Right, yeah. Groups are open spaces for people to come and find resources and meet people. And houses are more so a private party. Like, you have to know somebody kind of thing.
So at that time, I started asking anybody that we knew, that we talked to, who had more experience than we did, than I did, what it meant to be a house, what it meant to be part of a house. And I never really got very satisfactory answers. I went through years of asking people, like, what does it mean to be a house? Never getting an answer that really seemed to mean anything more than, it's just your friends or whatever. It's kind of a clique.
Yeah.
But I still wanted that.
Yeah.
I still wanted the capital H.
Yeah.
So we kept exploring it. And as we were developing in hosting parties and we did some educational stuff here.
And we hosted our first party. So
that was ours.
That was
something
ours.
that we were letting another group have in our home.
There is a bigger kink convention run by Dark Odyssey called Winterfire, which is a hotel convention that happens in the DC area. And because we live in Virginia. And it's a weekend at a hotel, and everybody from here goes to Winterfire. The town clears out. The Fetish Club doesn't schedule events. Nobody schedules parties. Nobody has anything going on. And we were like, well, we're not going to Winterfire. And there are 5 other people who aren't going to Winterfire. And we ended up having something like 70 people in our house who weren't going to Winterfire. And we hosted sort of a Valentine's Day weekend party. It was snowing. The power went out. And it was exciting.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. That was our first alone party. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, we could do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love a spreadsheet. So that's when the spreadsheets happened. And I started like going like, oh, who can we invite? Who wants to come to our private party? But we continued to host play parties for that group. And then I think we had some differences. So we started hosting for another group that we were also friends with because they needed a new house.
Which was less polyam focused.
More kink.
And more kink focused.
Yeah, more kink focused. Yeah. And so we were doing monthly parties for them. So we were hosting parties for this BDSM group, doing it on pretty much on a monthly basis. And I think, Hannah, we actually met you at one of the poly potlucks.
Yeah, I wasn't too adventurous at that point about going out to play parties, but I was going to munches, I was going to potlucks, and got invited over here because it was a group that I was already familiar with.
Yeah.
So, we were still exploring the idea of what it meant to be a house while we were kind of beginning to call ourselves a house, even when it was just you and I, Chast. After we had successfully done our own thing, and we had a lot of really great support from other community members and things, like you and I were sitting down having a conversation about how we were moving ahead, what we were doing, and sitting down with a legal pad with different columns of okay, this person belongs in this circle of our people.
This
and
person's
this person
a friend.
belongs in that
This person's
circle.
a helper.
Right.
This person just likes to show up and party, but we have a good time with them.
Right. And it was just like trying to figure out what that meant, what it was going to mean to be a house and to involve other people in our home and house.
Well, I also have to say that, before we established the house, the entire second floor of our home is a play space now. And that happened through love and time and talent from people in the community. And the majority of those are now affiliates with our house. We call them friends of our house. And people came and did electrical work. People came and did woodwork. People came and cleaned. People still come and clean. People donated furniture and rugs and supplies. We felt really blessed that people were embracing that we were trying to give a safe space and give a decent enough place to host parties. It's still an uninsulated attic, but we're working on that. That really showed us too. People want to give and we want to give. That's a thing that's important to us. I think that was when the idea of service being not related to submission or anything like that really came into play for us. Service, for me at least, service is the idea of just being a giving person as opposed to a taking person. Yeah.
Along there somewhere, what finally coalesced the idea of what a house is and could mean was the documentary Paris is Burning. I heard some audio from it on the Reply All podcast.
Which we'll link that episode. We'll link that episode in the resources for the show notes. Eric actually found it last night because
Episode 41.
Episode 41 of Reply All, because we actually rewatched that documentary last night to prepare for this conversation.
Right. So they talk about the documentary features the drag ball culture of the late 80s. Documentary came out, 1990? Is that right?
Yeah.
I think so. And it's primarily Black queer gay culture that it focuses on in the city. I just want to make sure I specify that so that when we're talking about houses, we're talking about houses from BDSM culture, which did appropriate those things from queer culture, and a lot of that happens in BDSM. But we want to make it clear that we do understand that, the origins of house necessarily are not our thing.
I'm going to push back against you a little bit about appropriation, because as you and I have discussed, Justin, a number of times, so many of the things that are a big component of the kink culture originated in queer culture.
Yes.
I wouldn't say were appropriated from, but originated in queer culture.
Well, a lot of kink culture is quear culture too.
Well, and evolved into being something else.
I think for me, the delineation is that for me, queer is part of my orientation and my identity as a person. Kink is not who I am. It is a thing I like to do, and I don't consider it I identify as kinky things, but I don't consider it to be my identity.
No,
but,
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
But being a homoflexible lesbian is like queer stuff. My identity. That's who I am as a person.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. But
so
that doesn't change what I said.
Okay, no, I agree. I'm just saying where I'm coming from with it.
The two of us, Max and I, don't have that aspect of it.
Yeah, so Max and Eric are both white, cis male, hetero dudes, and Hannah and I are the queer bees. Or queer babies.
I
was day drinking. Woo!
I was familiar with the concept of a house from the local scene, I guess, as being like a
local kink scene.
leather house or
Leather
a leather
house, yes.
family. And there were things about that as I started to, educate myself and meet more people that were really appealing. Because I had come out of a really close and closed community. I was looking for that kind of identification. And I really loved the idea that there was mentorship and, networking and that kind of sense of support. But those were not necessarily my people. That
Right.
wasn't the kind of house that I could participate in.
Yeah.
So I was definitely open and like looking for something that would be the same but different.
There are things that come from the leather community, the leather house community, that I embrace wholeheartedly. Things like loyalty, things like helping your house and helping your members be better and progress through whatever ranks you identify as, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think those things are great. I personally am not leather, so I don't know enough about the leather community to speak on it.
Do you want to explain at all what that is?
No, because I don't come from the leather community. I don't understand all of the history. I have read on it and I have listened to people from the leather community.
Whenever we saw those references and the pieces of it that we liked,
Exactly.
we could reference back to the origins
Yeah.
and say, oh, there's a tradition of this that extends beyond this one thing that we could potentially draw on.
What I learned from this piece about Paris is Burning is that in that culture, at least, houses represented places that vulnerable people were able to go for safety,
Right.
for the kind of mentoring that Hannah's talking about, and for support when they needed it, when
Right.
they needed financial support, when they needed a sofa or a floor to sleep on.
Right.
Emotional support, because a lot of those people were people who were cast off from their families of origin for simply being who they were.
That was a really hard part of the documentary for me to watch and experience, because I never came out to my mom. I'm out with my family members now just because I don't care anymore. But I never came out to my mom, and I always had this fear of rejection. And I know so many people who've been rejected by their families and who've suffered from it. And Hannah, you shared with us in our 3rd episode about your experience with losing some, not entirely losing, but having a change in your familial connections because of who you are as a person, and them not being able to accept who you are as a person. And so for me, that's a very painful little point, that there are these children out in the world who aren't accepted by their families. And that really touches me on a deep level, because there were times when I really didn't feel accepted by my family.
And it is those origins that made the concept of houses such a positive thing.
Yeah. I mean, from ashes came this wonderful thing.
So I'm not saying that we represent all of that necessarily.
Right.
But to me, that coalesced an idea of what a house could and should be, which
As
is
opposed to just a club.
right.
Yeah, we're not when we're talking about our house in social spaces where they're not open social spaces, more vanilla social spaces, we do I refer to it sort of as a social club, but it means more than that to me.
So as we moved forward, holding our own events and eventually moving away altogether from hosting events for other people
We did that last year.
for various reasons, Chasten and you and I discussed, after Hannah and I had been seeing each other for quite some time, and you'd had your relationship with Hannah.
Don't mind our dog barking in the background. He'll chill out.
And Hannah had been here, had, thrown in the work,
Yeah.
that we should ask Hannah to join our house. And we didn't really ask.
Consensual house joining.
We forced it upon her and presented her with jewelry in front of 40 other people. And we're like, so you want to do this?
I was very surprised. Not because we hadn't talked about house and what house could mean and like how we wanted to start building something together. So, we had conversations to build a framework for that. But yeah, I was surprised.
Well, I think by that point, too, we had already spent holiday time together. There had already been a lot of familial time and connection that had happened with the 3 of us. And so it seemed natural to go like, well, you're part of this. You're part of making this thing happen. You enrich our lives. Therefore, it makes sense for you to be part of this and benefit from it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
And I would say that there was a point whenever I was starting out and still learning all of these things that, if somebody had come to me and said, do you want to be part of our secret society? You have to do this, this, and this. I absolutely would have jumped on it. But that's not how this happened. I wasn't working to earn anything because there was nothing to earn. We were working towards it together.
Yeah, I think it's
creating something.
it was
Much more egalitarian.
Yeah. Well, I think it's when we identify people who we consider close friends and people who are in service to our house in a lot of ways, who come and do the help and come and do those things and are good stewards and good ambassadors for the house, we just go like, okay, it's time, as opposed to now they have to jump through hoops for us. It's more so like, okay, we see that this is an important relationship that we need to cultivate in some way.
Or
Let's invite them.
Using hoops as an example for that. They're the people who were already jumping through the hoops that weren't put forth.
Yeah. They do the work without being asked. I think that's the big thing.
Yeah, there aren't.
And when we
hoops to
do
jump,
ask,
but-
they're happy to do. It's enthusiastic consent all around. So we inducted Hannah into the house, and she accepted gracefully in front of all the peer pressure and people. Considering that, maybe there are better ways we could go about it. And we traveled along hosting parties, and we typically tend to we do seasonal parties, so about 4 a year, and it typically happens around our birthdays. So mine's in the spring, Hannah's is in the beginning of summer, Eric is also in the same month as me. We're both March babies. Max is in October. So our next party coming up is a Halloween party. But we would do parties sort of around themes and have people over, and we would allow our house friends to bring guests, and we have a vetting process for that. So we started doing that and learning the science of hosting kinky parties in your home in a safe way that promotes responsible behavior, but also promotes taking ownership of your own actions. And then I started dating Eric.
And, knock wood, we've been
So
really
lucky.
fortunate that we've,
So blessed.
we've only had a couple occasions on which we had to ask someone to leave. We've only had one occasion that was a pretty serious incident.
Yeah.
Knock wood, because
and here's the
it could
blessing.
go so differently.
The blessing of the way we do things now is that, so we typically do one open house, which is where we will invite members of local groups to come and experience what we do here, which is typically a fancy dress or a themed party or costumed party that involves kink and nudity and sex and all that stuff, and a lot of consent. When we have had those open houses, and then I've gone back to our friend group, our little secret society, and said, what did you see? Who do you think, or do you think anybody would be worthy of building a relationship with? And I think we had one person from our holiday party that everybody was like, not that dude. And we all agreed, and it was all very, and everybody
Independently agreed.
Yeah. Nobody had discussed it prior. It was just like, oh, I didn't like this dude. And we all had that same impression, and we were all able to okay, this is somebody who doesn't get an invite again.
Well, and let's clarify, it's not we don't like this dude.
It's people felt uncomfortable by behaviors
that were exhibited.
You're right.
Yes.
Right.
And
Yes.
can I
A
just
few
say that
red
it
flags.
feels like such a luxury to have that, to say we aren't just all happen to be in this room because we have a specific interest or a specific set of identities. We have shared values, and so when we get together, there's a different level. There's actual friendship involved.
Right.
That's not something you get from just showing up to any group or any party, and that's not a judgment on those spaces.
No, not at all.
It's more of just I really treasure having that conversation with folks to say, hey, how do we all feel about what happened? Because we have a relationship of trust in advance. Because a lot of times, when you're going out, it's all based on, I want to engage in this activity, and so do others.
Right.
And that's, only a very, very baseline level of trust there.
And those spaces do offer their own thing. We've been to those where they offer a fun chaos.
Yeah.
That we've been to ones that offer.
And that has its own value.
Yeah.
You get to meet
Absolutely.
people brand new.
Right. And you get to see crazy shit. I think that the BDSM community, and I've probably said this before, the Episcopal Church welcomes you, but the little old ladies don't. I think that the kink community is very similar. The kink community at large is welcoming to people because the kink community is comprised primarily of people who have faced ridicule or just oppression in their lives, and they've found outlets and community that feels like they can express themselves. And I think that for us, having private events where we are spending time with specific people who are friends who share the same values is a separate thing at all. This is completely from the community, because community spaces have immense value for education and bringing new people along. And I feel like we tend to pick up where those groups can't facilitate any longer. If we see somebody who's newish and struggling, we reach out and go, hey, here's what we have. Would you like to check it out? It's a safe space. Come party and see how you feel.
Right. And I think that one tends to see in any community, really, but we're talking about the kink community, one tends to see parallels with things that are in their background. You see parallels with church communities. And ever since you and I entered into the kink community, Chasten, that I've seen parallels with the punk community that I came up in as a younger man, where people who have felt like outsiders and had something that just made them feel different found a place that they can come together. People form new identities with new silly names, and dress how they feel really represents who they are on the inside.
Yeah. And that's all that was happening in Paris is Burning.
Yeah.
And that's, at one point they say that houses are queer street gangs, and instead of fighting in the streets, we have Vogue battles, and we pose and we dance, and that's how we compete. We dance. And I think that we're a unit of forward momentum with our values, and we really try to make sure that the people that we bring into our space honor our values. And it's not that they have to think the same way that we do, but we all have to be working towards a similar goal. And I think that in the kink community at large, we try not to gatekeep as much because we want people to be able to be themselves. But I think for our house, which is our personal property, there seems to be entitlement to space in the community. And I don't think that we are obligated as a private residence to open space to everyone. I feel like we are allowed to have the filter of our front door.
That's really difficult to walk that line and say we are allowed to exercise judgment over what goes on here versus we are judgmental of what you do in your own space.
Right.
It's really difficult to manage that just as a perception. And just for example, I don't expect and don't want every space that I engage in and every friend that I have to share politics with me.
Right.
But I really treasure having a refuge where I can be with people who just think the same.
So, Eric, you and I started dating, and we had been dating about a year, and the conversation came up between the three of us, and I said, I feel positively about this relationship. I feel like this is a relationship I am going to put work into and maintain for a while, and I would like this person to be part of the house. And the conversation was from Max, like, I want to see Eric doing a little bit more. And so the conversation that I had back was, here are the things that Eric does for me that make me better as a person and the value that I find in possibly bringing him into the house. And eventually, after having that conversation about 3 times, we all came to the point where we were like, yes, Eric is family. We want to invite him to the house. And so we tried to come up with a special thing, and we got you your own pin and did that. And then we put you on the spot, just like we did Hannah. And we were like, here's a room full of people. Now we're going to ask you a really important thing. Do you want to be part of our family? And so how'd that feel?
I also had no idea that it was coming. Much like Hannah. Yeah. It wasn't a thing that I had looked for. It wasn't a thing that I expected or would have felt any kind of, well, fuck these guys. They're not going to include me. So due to my own social awkwardness, I thought that was very, very awkward in its delivery. But at the same time, it was also very special.
So how, prior to being a member of the house, I talked a lot about, this is my house, this is what we do. We throw kinky parties. Please come to my kinky parties. Please let's fuck in front of people, blah, blah, blah. Did you have any notions about that or feelings about that?
With respect to
With respect to
the house? No,
just the house in general. There was something that you would constantly say to me, which was about how Max and I seemed to do it well. We seemed to be managing, our differences and our issues and for all outward appearances pretty well. And that was a positive piece of feedback for me that was very special to me because I'm in it and I can't see past the challenges sometimes. Sure. And for you to recognize as like this person I have this other relationship with that you felt positively about being like around that.
Yeah, and I said these sorts of things because, as you said, as part of it, that's your perspective, and it's hard to be objective from a one-party view. But most of my experience with things were through you, and they were here, but not all of them. When we have gone to other groups, we've gone to other places, and there wasn't really anything particularly wrong with any of the other places. I just felt that, I don't know, it didn't have the same kind of, welcoming feel isn't the right way to say it, but it just, the elements didn't come together in the same way as they do here. And that's what I meant. You guys do it well.
Thank you.
And the other groups, I've not really had any bad experiences in the other places. They just weren't my thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So now that you're a part of the house, and you've been part of the house for almost
a minute.
Yeah, a minute. Yeah. And I'll pose this to each of you. What kind of benefits do you get out of it? Like, is it an entity in your life? Is it a place of importance, or how do you feel about it in general?
Quite often, it's tasty food involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, speaking in a broad sense that doesn't necessarily have to do with relationship or polyamory or anything like that, it does feel like usually I spend a lot of my time by myself at home if I'm at home or something. And I do this because I talked about this in other episodes, but I need a lot of alone time to process things. so that I don't kind of spin out of control in weird ways. But even with other people that I've known and been around for years and years and years, there's not the same kind of collective nature with a lot of them that get the sense of here. Even though I'm not isolated and by myself, it's still that same kind of feel.
Good. I'm glad you feel isolated right now.
That's the improper way to say it.
No, I'm kidding. I'm just teasing you. No, I get that. Currently, at this moment in time, we're sitting here recording a podcast, having a conversation, interacting. This does not tap into my bank of social ability. This does not make me feel exhausted. I feel uplifted and empowered and energized by all of you. I don't feel worn out when I spend time with you. It doesn't feel like work. Yeah, it doesn't feel like work. Even though there is a lot of work that we do. Hannah, as the next to most recent addition to the house, what benefits have you seen or feel about it?
Well, I would definitely echo what y'all said, that this is a social interaction with people who fill me up and give me back a lot of energy that I can then go out and share with the world. This is also a place that fills a real need for me that I've come to recognize over time. I'm a service-oriented person, and I haven't always found a full expression for that within a given romantic relationship, and that's the thing, that I craved for a while. Being able to contribute to a house gives me immense sense of just personal fulfillment, and like I'm building on firm foundation. I'm building something that's permanent, and that is about the relationships that we all share. But it's also about being tied to a physical place, feeling that you are at home somewhere.
Yeah. Max, what about you? Oliver, what about you?
I think he disagrees with something.
On a really purely practical level, I've got help.
Yeah.
The three of us who now cohabitate, but even before we cohabitated, like we all have our areas of strength, the things that we're able to do for one another. With Eric, I also know that there's another person that can be pulled upon
to do some heavy lifting.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm real strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that helps me beyond the individual incidents, right? It's not just when I'm calling in somebody and we're actually pulling together. It's knowing every day that if I am in crisis, if I encounter something unexpected, if something bad happens, it's not all on me.
Yeah.
I have people.
Yeah.
And for a while, I just really wasn't sure that would ever be true for me again. Yeah. So it's been life-changing.
Well, and we will talk about in our next episode where we talk about anxiety. We talked about reaching out to partners and having friends networks and support networks. This family, our house, is an immense support network for me. And I don't tend to lean on it emotionally as much as I would if I didn't have other support networks. Which I think is a positive and healthy thing for me, because otherwise I would love to tell you all of my problems all the time and just have you all pat me on the head and feed me ice cream. Like, that would be great. But I feel like I get an immense amount of support. I tend to take on too much. I tend to not be very good at allocating resources and delegating tasks. And you are all three so good at saying, Chasten, what can I do? What can I contribute? We were just cooking out and making burgers last night and having some corn, and it was Max and Eric and I just hanging out before Hannah got home. And Eric goes, what can I contribute? And the fact that it's proactive asking of how can I help? How can I be useful? How can I do the thing to help you? That means so much to me, because I'm really bad at accepting help. And y'all have taught me that it's okay to ask for things and need things, and then that you can rely on people to give things, because I didn't always have that in my life. I didn't always have that safety net of being able to rely on other people, and I feel like I can rely on all of you. I feel like if something went wrong, I have somebody to call, and I didn't have that in my 20s. This is important to me.
Yeah, well, even beyond the four house members, the community that we built around us, and it feels a little like blowing myself up to call this community.
I say circle of friends.
Yeah, that we've built up around this are people who started coming here, or we met in the context of sexy parties. And
or at workshops, or we've met them out in other places that were still related to the community, the kink community. Sorry.
And they came for the sexy party and stayed for the friends.
Yeah.
So we have a circle of close friends that, again, I don't mean to be crass by making everything totally practical, but like, if I've got a flat tire, like, I know there are people that would come help me. We have people come here to clean, if we need help. We have people come building. Like, we've just built this little circle of people that we can trust to know that if I'm in a bind on a Friday afternoon and I call somebody, they're going to say, okay, I'll be there in 30 minutes. Not like, I don't know, man. Just, like, what is it?
Well, this has actually happened to me. We were getting ready to have my son's graduation party, his graduation from high school, and I was picking up the cake for his graduation party, and I locked my keys in my car. So I was sitting outside in a hot summer parking lot, which I'm not good in the sun and I'm not good with heat. And I messaged you, but you were far away because you were working a job way elsewhere, or you were running an errands way elsewhere. You were like on the other side of the county. And I happened to be talking to people who were involved with our house. Those people were ready to just say the word. If you can't get in touch with Max, just say the word and we'll be there. We're not that far away. And I wasn't even asking them for help. I was just sort of kvetching about the situation I was in and going like, oh, I have stress about this because we have a party and yada yada. What can we do to help? And that's so magical. Like, that's the world I want to live in all the time, is what can I do to help you be a better person and help you have what you need? If we all, and I say this frequently, if we all give, then there's abundance. And I feel like we have that. And that is such a blessing. Sorry, I get emotional about that. Like, little experiences like that are really touching to me.
Yeah. If you're enjoying the Pod Pod Cvlt Cast, check out our podcast show notes at podpodcvlcast.com, or keep up with us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook at Pod Pod Cvlt Cast, and Instagram at Cult with a V. Love us? Rate us on Apple Podcasts, or help us continue to make this podcast possible by becoming a patron. Head to patreon.com/podpodcvltcast. Remember, that's Cult with a V. Patrons get access to exclusive content like our Cultcast Media Club. This month we're talking about Paris is Burning, the Vagina Bible, and the musician Lizzo. Thank you so much to our patrons, Jenny, Sydney, and Kate.
Talking about the house and sort of the chronology of things coming to be and the chronology of house members. So here we are today. Where we are today with the house is Max and I own this property.
Well,
Hannah,
the bank owns it.
The bank owns our property. We get to manage it. Hannah has moved in to our property and is now a contributor to the household. Eric has his bedroom across town because I sort of insist that he actually does live here. He just has a bedroom that's like 15 minutes away. Are you feeling spicy?
You guys.
No. I just didn't have anything to say at the moment.
So where we are today is we are a house. We're an established house. We have a house logo, a house motto, or what have you, a mission statement, if you will. We have a website that is specific to our house members. We have a private, secret Facebook group. We insist that everything is very secret. We don't talk about what happens here in any specific way because we don't believe in outing people, and discretion is one of our core values. And we hold small events for fun stuff, like we'll do something on election night, and we've done a True American game here and there. Small get-togethers and more family-oriented stuff that are for everybody, and then we will vanilla for everybody. Kid-friendly, and then we have sexy parties, and that's a thing that we do, and we usually, we're starting to amp up towards our party season again, and we're getting ready to have a Halloween party, and I've already started doing save the dates for that, even though it's just now September 1st.
Yeah, it's really not that far away. It's
No, it's
6
coming
weeks.
up quick.
Yeah, they come up quick, and I like getting invites out there early so people can plan what they want to be naked as in my house, and and I get to hit somebody at the party. I'm so excited.
Oh, you already got plans.
Already got plans. A friend of mine is going to let me top, and I get to do some impact play, and I just haven't hurt anybody in a long time, and while not specifically a need I have, it is definitely an enjoyment thing. It's a pleasure for me to hurt people. So that's where we are as a house. We hold events. We have a circle of friends. We do a lot of charity stuff. All of our stuff gives back in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, we try to be absolutely transparent about, it's not necessarily part of the local culture to ask for a donation or an entry fee or what have you for a party. Some parties do, some parties don't, but it's not necessarily part of the culture to expect that here. We do. We ask for an entry. We call it a donation because
a portion of it goes
to a charity.
Right.
We do, and we are transparent with people come to our parties about, we keep a little bit to pay for paper goods and
paper towels and for food for the parties, because instead of making things always a potluck, which is also the culture around here, I like to have a planned menu because I like a lot of lighter fare.
That, and you also cut down on 6 people bringing the same thing.
That, and I feel like we've seen a lot of waste in communities, so that was a commitment that we've made to ourselves to cut down on the paper waste, cut down on the food waste. But so we do ask for an entry donation, but we always pick a charity that a portion of that donation is going to go to. And it's not that everybody has to quote unquote pay to get in. It's a donation. It is a suggestion. We do ask that if somebody's not able to do that, that maybe they volunteer.
Right.
And we try to make sure that there are opportunities for people to give in different ways, because service is not about just giving money. And we have people who do that. And we have people who give their time and also give the full donation. And
we also always communicate that if you don't have the time or availability to help, and you also don't have the resources for the entry donation,
still
all you
party
gotta
with
do is
us.
talk to us.
Yeah, just tell us. We don't need to know why. We just need to know, so that we can make sure we plan accordingly. And, that's part of our sort of give back is, we want a safe space for all of the people that are important to us. We recognize that everybody is in a different space at all times. People don't always have the means to give. And sometimes people just need to have things given to them. And that's the gift that I think that we give to our friends. And they give back to us.
Just presenting the opportunity, though, people surprise you. And we could name, several people who are always willing to contribute, even if they can't make it to the event. Even the folks who aren't benefiting that time around will get in touch and say, hey, how can I support you?
Well, I've had people who've been on planning committees for events who didn't want to come to the party. They just wanted to come plan a thing. That's an outlet that they enjoy. Awesome.
We're moving away from having specifically themed parties.
Yes.
But traditionally, the charity that we've chosen either has to do with the theme of the party or, if it's one of our birthdays, something that's sort of close to our hearts. I tend to want to do Southern Poverty Law Center or, some other anti-racism, anti-discrimination.
I like giving to Planned Parenthood. Hannah, for your party, you did a homeschool charity.
That reflects my background.
Yeah, and it also, promotes ethical homeschooling. Yeah. Eric shows up and hands me cash. He'll go, here's cash. And I was like, but wait, you're moving furniture. And he's like, no, here's also cash. Okay, cool.
So let's talk about the future. Let's talk about what we want to do.
Yeah.
What our visions are, what our goals are.
I have a lot. I view our house, like I said, as a blessing of property and space. And I feel like it's important to give back to the people who give to us, always. And I've always felt like it was important to give back to the community that has brought so many great things into my life. Without the local BDSM, polyamory, and kink community, I would not be the kind of healthy adjacent person that I am emotionally today. I feel like there's been a lot of growth that I've had that's been a huge benefit to me. So I want to be able to give back, and giving back in providing space for people to come work on art projects or craft projects. We have, you have a wood workshop out in the garage. You have masonry skills. Eric has woodworking skills. Hannah and I have been talking about doing a craft night because she's got some cool craft ideas, and we have a lot of craft materials that we want to get rid of. So offering a space for people to come and be creative and be themselves. Also continuing to offer a safe space for people to be authentic to themselves. Support sex work and provide educational resources. I really love doing workshops here because I feel like it provides a warm and welcoming space for people to come and learn and grow. So I would like to see us continue to come up with ideas to branch out and expand what we offer to people who are our friends of our house. And our goal is to do good in the world. And I see us doing that every day. We kind of joke that this is a secret society, but it's our secret society of subversive do-gooders.
Right.
And giving back to the world and helping to make the world a better place by propagating positive and ethical ideas that are my belief system, and I think all of our belief systems, is important to me. We do have a lot of conversations about where we are in the world and what's going on in the world and how we can help. And we do a lot of political activism and things like that. And we have a lot of people who come from various backgrounds. I mean, we have chemists, and we have medical professionals, and we have musicians, and I love that about us. We're this menagerie of really talented and interesting people who have different passions in their lives, and all of us have this common thread of we want to have a good time, but we also want to give back.
Right.
So I just want us to keep growing in that mission and continuing to do a good job in that mission. And there are mistakes we've made along the way, but I think we really are getting down to a place where the future is not this lofty idea. It's not this dream. It's where we are now and what do we want to be 5 years from now. I can see that in concrete steps, whereas a couple of years ago I couldn't as a house. So that's my take, and I'm going to shut up now. Next.
Anna, what kind of goals do you have moving ahead?
I just got here physically as living in the house, and I'm really excited about the potential of that. Living on my own, I had my own apartment, was a really important healing space for me for the past few years, so I did not at all take this decision lightly. I know that we were all working together on it, but for me, I'm just so excited about the potential for pooling all of our resources, our time, our talent, our energy, our money, because it's more than the sum of its parts. And I just feel like what I can contribute to here is above and beyond, anything that I could do on my own. I'm excited for, the things that we've talked about for improving the space to support all the goals that Justin mentioned, making improvements to the play space that we have and making everything, more accessible, more inviting. I'm really proud and happy to think that I could be a part of making that happen sooner than it would have.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Eric, for the capital H house, because you are not one of the cohabitants, do you have goals, visions for what you want to help us work towards? Or?
Well, if we're talking about the actual physical structure and those improvements that Hannah just mentioned, I have an aptitude for those sorts of things. Let's do that.
What about our metaphysical house?
No, in the broader sense, what I have gained has been a lot of self-awareness, and what I've also done a whole lot in my own life. It parallels you, but it's not the same thing, and that is coaching. It's a thing that I think that I have quite a talent for, which is really, it's Socratic in a lot of ways, and it's just basically holding up a mirror to said person that I'm coaching. But there are a lot of people out there that want that.
There are people who need guidance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I'm some sort of expert, but I do think I have a way of framing things in a self-reflective manner to people that they're like, hey, yeah, I can do these things. Yeah. And I'd like to do some more of that. Yeah,
and I think that really plays into, you and I really have a passion for mindfulness and try our best at it. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that I've tried to bring to my experiences and interactions with people here. And educationally, I'd like to go do that moving forward. And that's something that I enjoy talking to you about and processing with you about, because we do have sort of a similar idea sets on how to do that. And we do have similar desire to say, okay, we see where you are and here's where you want to go. And here's some suggestions on how you could get there. You get to choose what you want to do, which that's all coaching is.
From your perspective, what is it that you need to do? And
yeah, well, that's
in
what
that framework. That's. It's just my coaching method. Like I said, it's very Socratic.
Yeah. Well, and I think there are more philosophical ideas that I feel like we could spread as opposed to just kink knowledge or relationship knowledge.
Well, being kink adjacent, I don't really have very much kink experience and or knowledge, so it wouldn't really be my place to coach in that manner. However, what I do more mean is just people that are looking for a place to belong, or people who are like me, frustrated in their own monogamy and looking for something different. Like, hey, well, there's this other thing out there, and
being stewards, being ambassadors. Yeah, Max, what about you? What are your hopes and dreams for the house, capital H, and the house physical, and all of that?
Well, we've talked a little bit about expanding the inner circle to invite people to be house members who are not people that we are in romantic or sexual relationships with or whatever. The obstacle there, I think, is that we can't expect anybody to buy fully into our bullshit, although we have very close friends who do buy into what we're trying to accomplish. But to fully buy in and to be here at all the conversations for what we're doing, to have full voting power. I don't know if we can really ask that of somebody who isn't invested in a capital R relationship kind of way. But that is a goal. I would like that. I would like for us to expand what it is to be a house member without sacrificing the ideals involved and the level of commitment we'd like to see. And the rest of my goals and things are the blue sky, over the top version of the things that you're talking about. I am a wacko Marxist, so, I have ideas about collectivism. I'd like to see us be able to support makers and come together to help people support themselves through the art and things that they make, through the lives they want to live. Yeah. Eric, you're trying to say something. What are you trying to say?
No, I actually wasn't. I thought I was for a moment, but then it was fleeting.
So that's sort of a blue sky vision. We've talked about trying to support writers and artists and podcasters and musicians and things with our talent and space and abilities. I would like to see all of those things. I would like to see the physical improvements in the physical house. That would mean we are able to offer space for our friends to be more comfortable.
Well, and I think, something that we already do is we always offer crash space. We enjoy when we have a lot of Sunday morning conversations, and I'm pretty sure we're going to record an episode that is just our Sunday morning after party conversation. But I like it when we have friends who spend the night after a party and come and do the post party process with us, because we spend. I think it's become part of my aftercare. That after a party, I know that I'm going to have some special family time with at least one other person in this room. And that's important to me. And I think that offering that for other people is also important. I think that there's a lot of positive, happy space that we have built and that we put work into making it feel positive and happy that people don't always have access to in their own spaces. And so being able to provide that supportive dreams, like you said, I think the thing that limits us is money. We're not rich. We're getting by. We're living month to month, like pretty much everybody else right now. The economy sucks. And it's getting worse. But I think that being able to offer space for people to realize dreams is important, because sometimes it's just you want to do a thing? Well, here you go. Try doing it here. I think that sometimes is the barrier for people,
Well, to that end, actually, that being kind of a present barrier, a future barrier would become, well, sure, people can come by here and do all of this sort of thing, and okay, now that time's over. We've got you all wound up, so go on back to your own life. And cutting that down to where people do have, after a big experience where oxytocin is flowing and all that sort of thing, to be able to also then, after all of that, as you said, having it be a bit of aftercare function is healthy.
And there's, we each have our own need for alone time. We are introverts, and having other energy in our spaces does affect us. But I think that something I've really come to value from the Minimalist podcast, and then watching people move from big houses into little tiny houses and really removing the idea of stuff, is that my idea of space is very fluid now, where it used to be very much like, this is my space and I'm allowing you to be here. Now it's more so like, I want you to be here. That's sort of the ideal for me, is that like, if somebody can show up at our house and help, things are labeled and it's pretty clear cut as to where things are. People don't have to ask. They just come and know. And we've brought people onto our lives who like our dog, and who know where we keep the broom, and know how to take the trash out for us and stuff like that. And that's important to me too. It's kind of it's a level of domestic intimacy with people who don't live here that has been a challenge for me, but something that I think that I'm growing in, and I would like to continue to do so. To put a pin on it, we're a house. 3 of us live together. Eric lives in his bedroom across town. We are a family. You're my family, and I'm proud to know you all, and I'm honored and that you trust me to be in your lives, and that's important to me.
Thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Love you guys.
I love you too. Aw, love. All right, well, bye. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for listening.
You've just heard the Pod Pod Cvlt Cast with your hosts, Max, Chasten, Hannah, and Eric. Our theme song is Spencer Blues by Lobo Loco. Our break music is by Gabbarino. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or your favorite podcast destination. Thanks for listening.